Welcome, Sandman Nation. I'm Nate. He's Brandon. We are the St. Louis Syndicate, and we're here to share our amazing football knowledge with you. We were just hashing out, Brandon, how utterly important it is not just to make the correct picks, but to value the right ones correctly when you're doing your weighted and your confidence pools. And it's kind of interesting. A lot of us do confidence pools and weighting pools instead of just straight picking, but you can have a really good number and still be losing because you just didn't pick the right games at the right times with these confidence pools.
Absolutely. I was just thinking back, as we were kind of looking at some of, you know, wrapping up the regular season and going, hey, in the past, I have always had this problem with, like I try to track the right picks versus wrong picks all year because, famously, if you've never heard anybody say this or heard us say it in the past, that you're kind of trying to get somewhere in that 54 to 56%, along with a traditional VIG in a sports book, that's where you start making money, right? You need to get to that extra, 3 to 5 to 6% to overcome the VIG. And that's where you can really be profitable and you're not just slowly bleeding your money. So a couple of years ago, I started tracking that to see, regardless of the way that I weighted them, am I getting somewhere near there? And then going back and looking, I was hitting a lot of these low confidence picks because I wasn't second guessing myself. I wasn't going, but like, what about this? And then the games that I thought I really had an edge on, and like I had worked myself up to being certain about it, I was screwing those up. And this year, I started going, I'm not going to think about all of the edge cases for why this could go wrong.
Yeah.
I just went, hey, when you line up the offense versus the defense, and vice versa, and take into account the head coach and the special teams and all that sort of stuff. And you just go, here's where I think this is going to land. The game just gets played. And hey, if something stupid happens, that's going to happen sometimes. We're
Yeah.
only trying to get to 55%. So 45% of the time, you're kind of going, I'm going to miss those.
Yeah.
What am I going to do about it? And have been able to be considerably more successful in ranking mine this year by just going, here are the ones that when you just go, I'm not going to assume that something crazy is going to happen. Let's just put those towards the top and just take a shot at it. That
Yeah.
it seems like it's starting to build up. I've kind of only done it over the second half of the season. So we'll see, going into next year and starting in week one that way, if that helps me better. But it does seem like that's kind of the revelation that I've had over the last 6-ish weeks. And it's started to actually work its way through and be kind of catching up to some people that were ahead of me in some of these pools and those sorts of things. So yeah, now we're flying blind though, because my model doesn't really work anymore once all the books take down their over under win totals for the years. Now we're just going to kind of see how week 18 works for me.
Yeah. Well,
How are you feeling about it?
week 18 is, I actually feel pretty good about it. And I was, as we were talking through this, we were looking at our numbers and you had picked 139 correct on the year, and I had picked 130 correct. Now, to those of you that are not, you know, familiar with picking every game and rating against confidence picks, that's a difference between second place and about eighth place, seventh place. And it's like, wow, 9 games was the difference. So when I look at my picks, once again, where I struggled is exactly as you had success on, is actually picking the higher confidence games, right? I was still winning my lower confidence games, but just not at the same rate that I was at the higher. So I liked, the advice there of the ones that kind of throw out the noise. And I think that's
Yeah.
how we really need to be with all of our plays is take out the noise and assume it's going to happen how it is. Understand that probably, we say 45% of the time, probably 25 to 30% of the time, there's going to be something stupid. Think back to earlier in the season when the Eagles, I don't remember who they were playing, but they blocked a field goal and returned a field.
Oh,
And
the Rams.
the Rams, it cost me at that point in time a 16-point play, which is a top confidence pick.
Mm-hmm.
So that by itself, if, when you talk about those kind of swings, that by itself I could probably go back and look. It might be an 8 point swing for me. In some instances to some guys because whether they might have had the Eagles, I might have had the Rams, and vice versa. So
Uh-huh.
there are times that's going to just happen though, and those goofy things happen about 20% of the time. So I like your philosophy of just I'm going to stay straight. I'm not going to try to guess or handicap mistakes. I'm going to go with what I know. I'm going to go with the facts, and then we're going to move forward. And I think that's a great approach, and it's something
Yeah.
that I probably should have listened to you on back in week 7, not in week 18. So anyway, on to week 18.
Well, it took me a decade, of playing this kind of pool, right? Like, I mean, we've got to be getting close to a decade of
Close.
playing this structure of pool, and for it to click in my head and go, don't do that. Don't try to get every one of them perfect until you get about halfway down the confidence and then
Yeah,
go, oh, the rest of these don't work. I'm not too worried about. So I'm just going to let my brain pick them.
yeah,
And then those are all the ones that I end up hitting. And you go like, damn, like so yeah, we've got some ideas going into next year that
yeah,
we're going to be able to incorporate for an entire season and see how
yeah.
that
Right.
ends up playing out. Yeah.
It'll be fantastic. So there's some crazy stuff going on right now. This is a big time of the year, end of the year. We just got through Christmas. A lot of plays, a lot of picks happening, but we're wrapping up Survivor. So let's kind of start there. Let's bounce into our overall plays. Take a look at what we've got for Survivor this week. And just kind of see where we're at here. Survivor on the year has gone pretty well. Brandon, you have the breakdown of what's going on with Sandman Survivor if you want to share it real quick for our listeners.
Yeah. So we 11 of the 12 guys that went into last week survived. Um, one entry took a shot on Tampa. Unfortunately, that didn't work out for them. Um, the vast majority of them were plays on Cincinnati and New England, and then one on Jacksonville. One got by on Dallas, and one got by on San Francisco. So that leaves us with 11 going into the last week of the season, and everybody's got some decent picks left. When we started, kind of looking at the Sandman pool, we kind of, in my mind, I went, hey, if they're over a 6 point favorite, that's a reasonable one to at least look at.
Yeah,
We're saying, they're a touchdown without the extra point, better than the other team. And this week, we kind of get a weird one, right? Because Green Bay is going to, I think, just sit everybody.
yeah, they need
So
to.
Minnesota ends up being like a 6.5 point favorite. It's a little weird. Everybody has them available. That's a little risky, in division, that sort of thing. But we got quite a bit of Cincinnati, Jacksonville, Philly. Cincinnati, a little questionable. Philly, to me, is a little questionable. We all watched
Yes.
that game at the end of last week where they're like 12 yards in the second half. Obviously, you know, playing a much worse team now. But for me, Jacksonville is a great one. That's a great start. There's four of the 11 entries that still have that available to them. Um, but if we, kind of look over the last couple of weeks, there's definitely some people who have kind of went outside of just those top favorites. So we should be able to come back next week and break this down and kind of, walk through where everybody went. And hopefully we'll have some aggressive picks that work out for people and, see how many of these 11 entries kind of make it over the hump to chop up whatever's in the pool.
Yeah. It would be interesting maybe to see if anybody had an interest in um, of the winners next week, maybe to see if we could send out invites to join the pod with us and tell us their strategy through the season and just spend 10 minutes with us talking about it. Could be kind of interesting just for
Yeah.
the fans to
Yeah, I
hear.
was kind of mulling over this and Super Contest,
Yeah.
seeing if any of the top winners. We haven't talked a ton about the Fall City Super Contest explicitly, but for anybody that's playing in that, I've been able to see in the standings that one of our um, competitors here has two entries in the top three right now. So
Crazy.
um, that guy has quite a fun week ahead of him to figure out which five to play in each entry to see if he can take first and second place. Um, and then, there's a bunch of other people kind of mixed through here um, that are right there. So unfortunately, we only did 3 of 5, so we're still in the 3 or 4 points back of second place sort of scenario. Maybe we can hit a big week, but both of these should have some very aggressive plays available for them to get through these two pools, and maybe we'll be able to talk somebody into coming and joining us and kind of talking
Yeah.
through what their methodology was.
Yeah, it'd be kind of cool just to kind of hear because I mean, the you kind of hear what Brandon and I do. We kind of break these down every week, and just to give you guys an abbreviated version, you're seeing live a lot of what we talk about.
Yeah,
And then we touch base again on Saturday and Sunday before we actually put the numbers in, because things change, dynamics change, locker rooms change. So we need to make sure that those are all lined up in our favor. We've been pushing hard this contest, trying to get that number 2 spot. I think one's a little bit out of reach for us, and
yeah,
we had a bad week last week. I know that 3 wins is not a bad week, but we kind of closed the gap a little bit over the last 6, and just fell a little bit short. Some of our teams that we really thought were going to show up didn't show up, and that's what happens at the end of the year because there are some crazy things that occur, and we're going to talk about those the rest of this episode if you guys are interested in sticking around and listening to it. Brandon, I see on the page you've got Buffalo hanging out there as your play. Brandon's in one of those Uno Moss leagues that we're going to get Bill to start next year, and he's got the Buffalo Bills available. Any more thought
yeah.
on that, Brandon?
Yeah, this is just, for me, because this pool kind of went sideways on me in the middle of the season, and I lost 3 picks in a row, and
Mm,
I'm up against 4 entries that have only missed 1 game. So I'm out of it. It's just kind of playing for the love of the game at this point. But I did notice a couple of weeks ago that basically everybody except for 2 other entries had played Buffalo already. So since they were going to deal with the Jets the last week of the season, I went ahead and left them there. You know, there should really only be me and 2 other entries on that. And, hopefully a couple of the other favorites take a loss and we close the gap a little bit. But that's just kind of where I end up. I haven't used Jacksonville. I could have played Jacksonville. Um, I'm not a huge Philly lover as a team because of this offensive situation that they're in. I have both of those available, but I think um, the Jets are just so bad at this point
mhm.
that you'd almost want to take any above average team against them to keep yourself alive. So
Yeah.
so we're gonna go Buffalo. We're gonna take a run at it. Hopefully, they don't just decide to pack it in if
Yep.
they kind of go get down, at the beginning of the game or something, and just go, hey, we're a wild card team either which way, so let's just get everybody off the field, sort of thing.
Yep.
So that's where
Absolutely.
I land at.
That can happen. All right. Well, good stuff. Well, hey, we got a lot of other fun coming up. This is New Year's week.
Yeah.
If you're watching this, you're probably at home getting ready to have some New Year's Eve fun. Maybe you're getting ready to watch the college football games. And so let's take a look here at our playoff. We haven't covered a lot of college football this year. We've been mostly NFL focused and based. A lot of that is just because of the content and the time constraints. We could spend an entire podcast alone on college football. And so, with
That's for
us being
sure.
so heavily tied to Survivor and Super Contest, it actually made sense for us to focus this year more on the NFL side of the game. That being said, Brandon spends a lot of time in Ben Harper, focusing on college games, and so I think it's important to note that if you're looking for deals and you're looking for some potential good plays out there where you can beat the books, you can do it a little bit on some college games if you understand the teams and know the teams, mostly because it's so vast, right? The NFL is a very small air league, right? I mean, you kind of know what you're getting week in and week out. There's very little room for error. These are college kids with different kind of emotions and different kind of problems that are playing, and so you can get these bigger swings and the bigger spreads, and sometimes you can go out and win a few bucks.
Absolutely. It's a great way to say it. Yeah, it's such a bigger market. So,
Yeah,
if you figure out or the entire market figures out over a week's worth of time that when these lines lock on Tuesday, that really it should be something else by the time we get around to later in the week, you can really buy yourself an edge. Though
yeah.
I will bring up, as I've kind of been watching these line moves, I don't know, I can't name one line move so far in the Bulls that didn't go the opposite direction. So that's one thing to keep in mind. I don't have a great theory on why that is, but it's been horrendous for anybody that does the way that I do it, and just kind of been kicked in the butt week after week these last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
But now we're into max motivation games, and so you should at the very least be able to handicap the 8 teams
Yeah.
and come to an opinion on where you think um, these are going to land. Do
Well,
you
my
have one
first
that's your
opinion on
favorite?
these, yeah, my first opinion on these though is that we need to do a better job. I say we loosely because I have nothing to do with this. They need to do a better job of picking these teams. And while I understand that it's important to get JMU's and Tulane's a shot in here, it's just not working. The games are they're outmatched, they're outclassed. I I understand the desire to say a Division 1 football program is a Division 1 football program, and in reality, it's not. There is the big boys, the Power Four, and then there's everybody else. And even a little bit of the Power Four is questionable when you take a look at some of the Big 12 teams at the lower end of the scope. And I mean, but mostly top to bottom. I mean, I'm going to take a lower end Big 10 team or SEC team or even a mid to low tier ACC team over the Tulanes of the world and the JMUs of the world. It's just not happening, man. And so we've got to come up with a better way. I'm not saying they don't have a spot. I'm not saying these guys shouldn't deserve an opportunity to play, but there needs to be either a second tournament, like an NIT for that level, or there needs to be a different type of play-in scenario where they would play maybe a team like a JMU would have to play a Tulane, or a Notre Dame would be having to play a JMU, or somebody that was on the fringe, Michigan or whoever it is, right on the outside edge to get into this group of 12, because the first round of games is almost not even fun to watch. Now, that being said, Miami and Texas A&M was a good defensive battle. It wasn't really a good game. It was just a good defensive battle. And seeing them move on for the winner of Ohio State, I hate to say it, the way both of them played, Ohio State's going to mop the floor with them both. Um, it's just they're just not that caliber. I think last year the same thing happened, Brandon. Didn't the top teams that had the bye, other than Notre Dame, all passed through? Just boom, they they won the first round, then they lost the second round to the higher seeded teams, and we almost ended up with the same thing that the BCS would have given us.
No, well, so last year, like I am exactly with you on your point. Um, Last year they had the weird thing with the 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 seeding
Hmm.
where all of the teams that came out of the first week won the second week
Oh yeah,
because they were
that's
because the
what it
way
was.
that they worked out the top four was inverse to like what made logical sense, at least for me. Um, so this at least, hey, the top four teams are the ones that get the bye this time.
Yes,
But you're
yes,
exactly right that or at this point, when you're going to expand it some, but not like uh 32 teams or something like that, where you're getting down into the teams that are in the back half of the 25 and even lower. This needs to just be the guys that are throwing heat. And I get
Yeah.
it. Like you want to believe that all of these teams can beat each other, but that's just not the reality in college football. There's too much difference in speed and weight that you, yeah, any one of these teams could win, but the chance is so small that it's not worth doing it.
Yeah.
That, my stance is always, I get it that we want to pretend like gambling is this thing over here, but there are power rankings for every one of these teams.
Yeah.
And you go, hey, what if these two teams play on a neutral field? And
Yep.
Vegas can go, this is who would be favored, and this is by how much. And if you just went, who are the top 12 power ranked teams? We're going to have them play.
Yeah.
And I get it. Everybody goes, hey, then what's the point of playing the season? The point of playing the season is 14 weeks of entertainment. That's the point of playing the season.
Well, I'm
Now,
gonna I'm gonna
I,
I'm gonna go with you there. Indiana's a good example of this. You play the
yeah,
season because you develop a program that can get into the 12.
uh huh,
So
yeah,
Indiana last year started this mess. Remember how we were tracking them last year?
uh huh,
And then this year they're undefeated and at the top. But you
yeah,
play so you can grow and develop to potentially
uh huh,
become one of these. Now,
yeah.
that doesn't happen overnight. So,
No, this is basically the fastest you can do it. To Cignetti's
yes.
credit, even
Yeah.
if Alabama takes them out behind a shed and whips their ass on Saturday,
Yeah.
this is a meteoric rise of a
Yes.
program.
But that's to
But
your point. That's why we play
yes,
for entertainment and to see who can get to this point.
yeah, that look, the reality is that if you could figure out a way to talk the entire team that's in Indiana today to go to JMU, it's still a different scenario.
That's right.
Like the structure around the team is still something that's different. And I get it. The real fix is there needs to be three instead of two. Um, what do they call the biggest piece? FBS versus the FCS, like
Yeah.
divisions, I guess, is
Yeah.
what that segment is called. Like you need a third one that's in between that goes, hey, Tulane and JMU is considerably bigger than, South Dakota State. But they you can't take Tulane and just go, here, play Ohio State. Have at it. Because it's gonna be a bloodbath.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be a
Absolutely.
bloodbath for Miami. Miami has this storied franchise. They got their own hand signals and stuff. They are probably going to look worse than JMU did playing Oregon
Yeah. Probably. I mean,
three
Ohio State
days
might
from
beat
now.
them by 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, yeah. I think um, when you start looking at the lines and stuff and you go, hey, the biggest line is Ohio State by 9.5. And you go, that the only thing that worries you is like, hey, the U and their defense. And, you go, yeah, that's fine. Except for that they barely beat Texas A&M, who does not have Ohio State. What they have 2, 3 NFL wide receivers on their team,
Yeah.
probably.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Easy.
so you just go, hey, good luck. I hope you get to that backfield and start messing up where he plants his feet because that's your shot. If you
Yeah.
don't get him off of his stance, you're just gonna get picked apart
Yeah.
and it's gonna be over. So that's one of those things that you just go, look, if I went to Tulane and then I watched them all year have a very great year, I would go, hey, I'd really like to get in the CFP. But in reality, when you're just agnostic to the whole thing, you just go, why don't we just have the 12 best teams? Just go at it.
Yeah,
And you're going to get bad outcomes.
you are,
The 12th team playing the fifth team is probably going to get whipped anyway when it comes
regardless.
down to it. Like
Yeah.
whoever you put in that 12th spot, they're probably going to get beat by Oregon and probably by more than a touchdown.
Yes.
But at least it will be a franchise that you can name where their college exists at and that you've seen some of their games at like 7 p.m. on a broadcast network throughout the year.
Yes.
And, you know, as we're doing an entertainment product, we should just do some of that.
Yeah. No, and I don't disagree. I think I got a couple of points there for you that I'm with you on. The first is, um, you're talking about Indiana and their quick turnaround. One of the things that is to Indiana's benefit is that they played in the Big Ten. So week in and week out, they faced tougher competition. So when they come to this point in the playoffs, facing Alabama is not going to be a crazy challenge. And I'm going to give you the example of take Vanderbilt, for example, or take Mizzou, for example. And I'm hesitant on Mizzou because they play like crap right now. But if I take Vanderbilt, Vanderbilt is going to whip Tulane or JMU. They're going to be favored in every
Yeah.
game. And so that's the kind of competition that Ole Miss or Georgia or Alabama are playing week in and week out is teams that they're beating teams that can beat them on any given Saturday, including Bama lost to Vanderbilt. And
Uh huh.
then they're putting these teams that couldn't handle those teams into the playoff system because they think they are deserving. And then that's
Yeah.
not quite right. So I think, and I really like this concept and idea. And we may have mentioned it last year a little bit, touched on it. And I'm not a super expert on it, so you're gonna have to, hold me accountable, I guess, for not being an expert. But in Europe, in soccer, they have these multiple tiers:
Yeah.
Champions League, Premier League, whatever. Um, I think that would be a great purposeful point for college football and playing a 14-week season is to see who is earning their way into the next tier and who's coming back. For example, if you have your Premier League, you know who that's going to be. That's the SEC and the Big Ten for the most part. If you have your Champions League, that's probably going to be the ACC, the Big 12, those guys for the most part. And then you can have everybody else. And if you're really, really good at that Premier League or whatever they call it, and you're in the top three, then maybe you get moved up. And then if you're really bad, then you're going to get moved down. And you got to earn your way in and with respect through the seasons go. And then you can have a Champions League championship, a Champions League, and a Premier League. And you could have three sets of champions. And how cool would that be year in and year out?
Yeah. I'd never really thought about that because the way that we always converse about this is through the lens of the conferences,
Yeah.
right? And look, I'm admittedly, I like weird shit and just to see what happens, right? I go, look, we're all just here entertaining people. So just try something out. See if it's
Yeah.
awesome. This is a great idea because the reality is the conferences have turned into let's drag the entire school from one conference to the next just on the back of football, basically.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you have some basketball schools that are so strongly basketball and the team doesn't compete in football really. And thus they go, hey, we're going to make some moves. But the TV contracts are really only so big with football that you're literally like moving teams around and you're screwing these conferences up because
Yeah.
you're going, hey, I want to be in the biggest, TV contract. If you went, hey, go be in whatever conference you want. But in each sport, we're going to do it this way.
Yeah.
You can be in the Champions League in football if you're Alabama.
Yeah.
But if you have fallen apart on the basketball or the baseball or whatever, swimming, skeet shooting, and you're not competitive, well, then you come down some tiers and you
Yeah.
play against you get to play in a end of season competition with other schools that are the same ranking band as you.
Yeah.
And you just go, hey, we're going to do this across every sport. If you want to get elite at something, you can, we'd have to start it off and we'd have to go, okay, here historically, here's kind of where the schools are, and here's the rules of you having to fall down or climb up. And it would be kind of sketch for the first couple of years, but you would frame this out where Indiana probably 3 years ago would have been about as far down the conferences as you can go as like
Yeah.
a big school, right? Because at a certain point, you bottom out when you have offensive linemen that are 285 pounds. So
Yeah.
you're going to beat up on Lindenwood either which way.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
hey, you're in the third or the fourth division, and then you get a little better. And then you're in the third, and then you're in the second, you're in the first, and every year you're winning. You're at the top, you're the top two or three, and hey, you're going to go up. And then you build yourself all the way up and you find your level of like homeostasis where you go, okay, we got to the part where like we can kind of win this division and then we go up a year and then we get beat up and we come down and you find your
Yeah.
spot where you're kind of settled. That's a really good. Oh man, I haven't heard anybody bring up the soccer model to college sports. And if you disengage it from the conferences, I think it works fantastically.
Well, and you can have conferences, but
Yeah.
y- everybody has their conference. And let's talk about how that works, right? Because everybody's worried about the money, the blah 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 blah. Well,
Yeah.
you can be you can get shares of the money from the conference based on the tier you're in. So you want to get more money, improve. You want to hire a coach. This is how coaches can get their path. This is how portal guys could move. Maybe there's a structure there, right? You
Yeah.
cannot really jump up. You can't jump back, or you can, NIL dollars. Maybe there's only certain. If you're in the top league, you can have this many NIL dollars, and the middle league has this many. And you want to get more, you got to improve. And I mean, I think there's so many ways, and nobody says that you can't have the SEC and that Arkansas and Missouri
No.
can't be right, that you can't play the majority of your games against each other. But
Oh, and you
there's
can
got
you can go like Bierman's direction where he goes, hey, these should be geographical.
yes,
So take a bunch of the teams that are geographically similar, put them in the same conferences, and then go, hey, if it turns out you're geographically close to a team that's not any good, they'll
yeah,
be a division or two down in a couple of years, and they'll be playing other teams in
yeah,
whatever sports they're good or bad at in whatever division.
yeah,
But hey, collectively, the Southeast is going to be teams that exist in the Southeast.
yeah.
And like the Pac 16
What a
will be Pacific located teams, you know?
yeah.
And then if you get really good, you'll get to play in the, whatever champions level at the end of the year against everybody from every conference that's that good in that sport.
And maybe it's as simple as your first 7 games of the season are within your region, and then based on how
Yeah.
you're doing, then the schedule adjusts to
Oh, that's
some
even more fun.
Champions League games and some middle game. And it's like
Yeah.
I really think, obviously we know there's a better way to do it, but I was thinking about that the other day, and I'm like, maybe if we had this tiering thing where you go up and down like they do in soccer, that
Now,
and I, like I said, I'm not an expert on soccer, and people will tell you what they love and don't love, and somebody will tell you that all the players will only want to go to the top teams and whatnot, and that's fine. That's kind of how
they
it is now.
will.
I don't know if it's any
Yeah.
different.
Look, I was listening to somebody talk, you know, yesterday or the day before, and they were kind of making the argument that like what started off with going, hey, if Indiana or Oregon wins this whole thing, this will be the third different Big Ten school to win the CFP
Yeah,
in a row, right? So, um, and their and the other person they were talking to's theory was kind of, hey, I think what's happening is in the SEC, it's smoothing out way faster than everybody everywhere else. That like the lower teams in the SEC are still in the SEC.
hmm
So just by um historical love for the conference and like the amount of prestige it carries around, when you when you're at Bama and you're the second running back and you go, I'm gonna go jump in the transfer portal and go to another school. Well, maybe now you just go to another SEC school because you
yeah,
like being in the Southeast.
yeah,
And that's smoothing out and kind of the bottoms coming up, the tops coming down a little bit. And in the Big Ten, those top teams are still outspending the lower teams,
yes,
pretty significantly. And so Ohio State and Michigan, and now Indiana, and then Oregon, obviously coming over from the Pac 12, um, are able to maintain their tyranny at the top of that division because, hey, we still have more money than everybody else, sort of thing. And that you would still have that regardless of what combination of teams you moved around and went, hey, here's the ones that get into the top division of the playoffs or not. You're still going to have those people run around and make those sorts of arguments that like, hey, whoever's in the Champions League from last year, they're going to
yeah,
get more of the top flight guys, just like the top of the SEC and the top of the Big Ten get most of the guys right now. So, it kind
yeah,
of it kind of is what it is, but at least then you could quickly see that like, hey, if you're, Kentucky in football, you're going to be in a much lower division than your basketball team is. Because
yeah,
basketball is still playing in an elite fashion and they don't put as much into the football and you still get to be in the SEC, but you're going to play in if you win enough games, you're going to be in a lower division to play
yep,
football. And that's
yep.
what it is. And I think that's a genius idea.
Um,
Unfortunately,
so
you know, college
nobody's gonna
football
listen to
fans are
us.
going to hate soccer. So
Well,
they're going to
yeah,
go, hey,
they
starting this as a, hey, we have this thought about soccer. Somebody's just going to fire their gun in the air and tell you to get the hell away from them.
there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
M- One last thing, I think you bring up a really good point about the smoothing out happening in the SEC faster, and I think that that
Yeah.
is partly because the SEC is still in the Southeast. The
Yeah.
Big Ten goes coast to coast. They go from
Sure.
Rutgers to Oregon, UCLA,
Yeah.
Michigan, Minnesota. I mean, Iowa, Indiana. I mean, they're vast as opposed to the
They're
SEC's Texas
everywhere
to Florida.
except for the Southeast.
Yeah, but
You
Oregon is
notice
still going
nobody's
to get
defected from the Southeast to the Big Ten.
no, no, and they're not going to. But that's that smoothing out, right? Because players want to
Uh-huh.
play where they're at. That's why you're going to see Penn State guys if they want to play close to home around their family. Their options are Penn State or what? Rutgers or Maryland maybe, or
Yeah.
Virginia, or so then go if you're in Oregon, you're gonna go to Washington or Oregon State or Oregon if you're elite and you want to play where your family can see you. You're probably not gonna go to UCLA even though you're still in the Big Ten. You're not gonna smooth out and go from Oregon to Michigan. Michigan to Ohio State,
Yeah.
maybe Indiana to. I think Cignetti's growth has been a little bit of an anomaly, being right there in the middle of the nation. But maybe that's what's helped it is because you can pull from all particular areas as you're building. I don't know that for a fact. It's just a thought.
Well, and it's a new booming thing.
Yeah.
You can make the argument, come here, we win games, you get to look, if Indiana wins the CFP,
Oh man,
Mendoza never has to pay for another meal in the Midwest.
ever.
Like, you brought a national championship to the Hoosiers in football? What are we talking? Like, that guy, they're gonna build him a statue during the summer.
Yeah. You you want one steak and you want two. Utah, give me two.
Yeah, like yeah, it's you have those sorts of things where you go, look, we win games here. We're in a division or conference where if we win games, we will get into the CFP, and then all we got to do is execute. And that's the argument that you get to go into these kids' homes and make to them and their families is
Yeah,
go, and yeah, you're centrally located. You go, hey, if you're anywhere in the center of this country, it's pretty easy to get here.
that's
So,
right.
he has
Oh
set
yeah,
himself up an interesting little scenario um, where you think he's just a wild man.
yeah,
Like all that shit talking he did last year, or the shit talking that he did when they announced him as the coach. Just go,
yeah.
that is crazy. Why is this math teacher screaming at everybody? And then he just, he has done nothing but just, look, they took a whooping last year, but he
You
stood
learn.
right there and went, we're going to do it. And then stood on the sidelines while Notre Dame just beat his brains in and then went, all right, I'll see you guys next year. And, you got to love it when a
And
new guy
he,
shows up
yeah,
and then can back it up a little bit.
yeah. No, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. All right,
Yeah.
so for the essence of time, rapid
Yeah.
fire. Ready? Oregon or
Yes.
Texas Tech, win only.
Oregon.
Oregon. Alabama or Indiana,
You're saying win only?
win only. I just want to know your winners.
Indiana.
Ole Miss or Georgia,
Georgia.
Miami or Ohio State.
Where are you at?
Ohio State. Absolutely
Ohio.
Ohio State.
What
Yeah.
about Georgia, Ole Miss?
Uh, give me Ole Miss for the sake of argument.
Okay. Indiana, Bama?
Indiana. Though I did pick Bama at the beginning
Okay.
of the year to win the whole thing. I should stick with them, but
Yeah.
Indiana's going to roll.
And where are you at? Oregon versus Texas Tech?
Oregon. I think
Yeah.
Oregon wins by more double digits. I think Ohio State wins by double digits. I think Ole Miss's kids are still pissed about Lane not being there, but I predicted what they were going to do to Tulane because of that. Georgia's a whole different animal, though. We're going to say
They
they
are.
eke one out, maybe. And then, man, Indiana, Alabama is going to be tough, but I'll go with Indiana because I think that's just a better story.
I think they got to win. It's 7. I'm on Bama. Like
Yeah,
I don't think Indiana just whips the crap out of Bama. Like I
yeah.
don't think there's enough institutional history there to do that. But
No,
the
boy,
Oregon
they
one's
could, though.
very interesting because Texas Tech not being favored when you're the 4 seed is, a little bit of bulletin board material, right? Like you got to play all week. The upside for Lanning up there in Oregon is he gets to spend the last 2 weeks berating his team about them letting JMU come back and cover.
Yeah,
And if he hasn't spent 2 weeks bringing that up twice an hour during every practice, then I don't know Danny Lanning, but I'm gonna guess that he did because he seems like that kind of
Yeah,
guy.
yeah,
So
he probably
uh,
is that kind of guy. Him and
that's the
really the
that's the
two.
one that jumps out to me. Yeah, yeah, that
Uh,
just goes, hey, you better not rest
right.
because we're taking a step up. So yeah, I think to me, my two clearest ones are Ohio State and Georgia. The other
Okay.
ones, there's something, to it that like, hey, Texas Tech might be better than I think they are. I might just be,
Yeah.
Danny Lanning might just be in my head because I've watched the way that he's
A little
coached his
biased.
team up, you know, but, and I just, look, I have a hard time believing that you can show up in your second big year and just dog walk Bama. So I got to take the points there, but I think that Georgia and Ohio State just do the thing. They just go
Yeah.
out there and they just win these games and they win them with margin and they cover. And hey, it's a great year for Miami and Ole Miss, but you finally ran into like two serious teams, and
Yeah.
that's the way it's going to break down. At
Yeah.
least in my mind.
No,
Maybe we'll get
I can
to
see it playing that way.
Thursday night and be completely surprised, but that's where I think we're headed.
All right. Well, we'll see next week when we do our recording who we've got moving on to the championship game.
I'm pumped. I cannot wait.
All right. Well, it's that time where we bounce through some games here and talk about what games we've got on slate this week. Decided to show this week, Brandon, our clinched playoff spots in the hunt and on the bubble teams, just to kind of give an idea of where everything sits. Um, you know, almost everything's been decided, but there's still games that matter. So I'm just going to real quick run down games that matter. On Saturday, we've got Carolina at Tampa Bay. That game still matters. We've got Seattle and San Francisco still playing for something there that matters. Indianapolis and Houston. Houston's playing for something that matters, though we do have reports that Riley Leonard will be doing the quarterbacking as opposed to Philip Rivers. So that's going to be a little bit of a lopsided affair we'll talk about in just a minute. Jacksonville, Tennessee still matter, but that's more for Jacksonville and Tennessee. Chicago, Detroit matter for Chicago seeding. Denver and the Chargers. We've got reports that Harbaugh will not be playing his starters. Denver needs this a little bit more. We'll talk about the line coverage here in just a minute, but it still technically matters. New England and Miami matter. I'll be interested to watch this one because New England may not play their hardest, but because Denver is in a situation where they should be able to walk through this. And then, of course, the primary game of the week that ended up with the Sunday night play, Baltimore and Pittsburgh, for who wins the North. That'll be one that matters. Fun games, man. I mean, it's going to be a pretty good week 18. If you're Roger Goodell, you probably are excited that you got this kind of this many games that still matter week 18.
Yeah, you have to be excited. It's so easy to look because of the way the seedings work. You're going to have some games that matter, but to be able to fence off three games that for sure matter and go, we're going to do two of them on Saturday. We're going to do a Sunday night game. They're all, regardless of what happens before them, it's still going to matter. Is a huge win. Sure, the whole Christmas Day thing where the games were pretty good, but they were definitely way less important than they looked on paper in the summer. So this
Oh
is a
yeah,
big win for Week 18.
yeah, yeah.
And
That's a great point because
my favorite thing that we're building towards here is the afternoon game on Saturday is Carolina and Tampa Bay. And for the fun of already eliminated Atlanta, if Carolina wins, it is what it is. But if Tampa wins, then the already eliminated Atlanta comes into play. that if they beat New Orleans, Carolina still wins the South. And if they lose to New Orleans, then Tampa Bay. So Tampa Bay needs to win and get Atlanta to win, who has nothing really to play for. So that's
And
my favorite scenario so far, is to just have a completely eliminated team. One, for that matter, just on Monday Night Football, just put it to the Rams for just
yeah,
no reason other than screw those guys. And now they get to go play New Orleans with two other teams' hands in their fate. So that's a fun one to think over when you're going down trying to make your picks this week.
yeah, and New Orleans is not playing like a team right now who is eliminated. They've got a young quarterback coming
No.
on. Kellen Moore finally turning the corner. We've always been laughing this year about the team that plays Tennessee or the team that plays New Orleans. Those guys,
Uh-huh.
15 weeks in, figured something out. They've started gelling. We've matured, we've improved, and look out, man. New Orleans has their quarterback. Tennessee might have their quarterback. And now these teams could be ones we talk about next year that go from worst to first, very similar to the several teams this year. So that'll be kind of interesting to watch as well.
Yeah, it turns out we should have had that fourth category for Survivor be who's playing the Jets, and just
Right.
throw that out for
God,
the.
they're bad.
Oh, I saw somebody did some math that if you started off with like $100 at the beginning of the season and bet it on the Jets to not get an interception, and you rolled it over every week, that you'd be at like $1.6 million now.
I think I saw that to not get an interception, to like not pick somebody
Right.
off.
Yeah, the Jets have not gotten an interception yet this year.
You would never guess that with Sauce being on their team for the first half
No.
of the year.
Yeah, yeah. No, that was the other funny stat that I saw. That Sauce went 1-7 the first 8 weeks, got traded, and then went 1-7 the second 8 weeks on a first
Ooh.
what started off as a first place team.
Oh, wow.
So he's played 16 games and went 2-14 so far. I saw it. He put out. I don't. You never know. You never know what's real and what isn't real. But I saw a tweet or something from him of him running through his stats for the year and going like, yes, I get everybody scoreboarding me. He's like, but I have given up like 200 yards in receiving the entire year. He's like, I've given up like 2 touchdowns, one on a blown coverage. He's like, the ball's only been
Oh
thrown
my
at me
God.
like 22 times this year. He's like, I don't want to hear it. I get it. You guys all get to talk your shit, but like, I, I'm doing my job. And I'm like, that's a little explicit for, a guy, but like those, wide receivers and cornerbacks are crazy. So it very well could
Oh
have
yeah.
been him just going like, you know what? I'm tired of you guys in my mentions because I'm doing my job.
That's funny. Oh, I
Yeah.
like that. That's hilarious. Good stuff.
Yeah.
So let's run down the list. Who, Brandon, do you have on your favorites? Let's talk about maybe three or four for the week that we can give some people.
Yeah. Let's start at the top, right?
Sure.
I make Carolina a 3.5 point favorite. They're
Okay.
catching somewhere in the 2.5 to 3 points. I think Carolina's the better team. My numbers say Carolina's the better team. Baker Mayfield probably has something torn in his up. He has just gotten the shit beat out of him for 17 weeks. I I don't know how you don't take the points here. Even if Tampa figures out a way to win, is it by more than a last second field goal or something? Like this one jumps off the page immediately to me. So where's your head out with Carolina Tampa?
Carolina, Tampa. I think one thing that I talk a lot about, and I am like a broken record, and sometimes I need to listen to my own advice, is that these division games matter, and they matter usually to within 3 points. Um, In this particular instance, my numbers say that Tampa is a 2-point favorite, with most lines that I see out there around 2.5. If it gets to Tampa being 3, then you definitely have to play Carolina no matter what. Personally, I am on Carolina because I think that Carolina is playing better right now, the last 6 weeks of the season, and I think that Tampa is playing worse the last 6 weeks of the season. I do think Tampa's a little bit healthier, but for some reason they have not been able to gel the last 6 weeks, even as they've gotten healthier. I think that there's some coaching issues. I don't like the play calling scenarios going on Tampa. I haven't watched a whole lot of their games, but what I do is I don't see them utilizing Bucky Irving in a similar fashion to how Atlanta utilizes Bijan. Now, they're different types of runners, but Bucky Irving kind of can set the pace of that offense. What they're doing is they're relying too much on Baker rolling out and dropping back and heaving it, almost throwing Russell Wilson moonballs in some instances to those big receivers and trying to let them go up and get it. Instead of playing a methodical type of offense where you're executing up and down the field, right?
Yeah.
I'm not seeing executables. I'm seeing a lot of prayers. And I think Carolina has a better running game with Rico Dottle at the moment. I think that they have a better structure and a game plan. And they're probably going to be the team that comes out on top here, takes the division, and wins this. Now, if you look at last week, one thing that I want to point out um, is that Tampa Bay just got rolled by what we've calculated as one of the bottom 5 or 6 teams in the league in Miami. Now,
Yeah.
credit to Quinn Ewers. I think he's given them a little bit of a spark. I think he's better than Tua at this point in their careers. I don't know if he's always been that way, but I think right now, I think Tua's best football's behind him, and they need to look in Miami towards the Quinn Ewers era, and I think that's a positive for them. I also love that Theo Weiss caught a touchdown. I think he's an outstanding receiver out of the University of Missouri, and
Yeah.
I'm really happy about that. But Tampa should have taken care of business in this game and got rolled, where Carolina played the number 1 seed and played them fairly decent. Um, didn't win, they were right there. Seattle kind of took off at the end and just won it there in the last quarter. But I think Carolina is a better play in this scenario. I think they're a tale of two teams going opposite directions. So even though my number says Tampa Bay by -2.5, that's partly because I have a year's worth of data. And that's something that we talked about earlier is we're going to tweak our models for next year so that we can
Yeah.
adjust accordingly. And one of my tweaks is going to be potentially breaking the season up into quarters and trying to figure out how to adjust my numbers to account for maybe the last 6 weeks of the month, and maybe even giving me 2 numbers like, hey, if you looked at it for the year, it would look like this. If you look at the last 6 weeks, it looks like this. So that's a whole lot to say. I like Carolina.
Perfect. No, that was all good info. Um, that gets you in the same direction of just kind of what jumped off the page to me. Like when you look at it and look, I don't love them going on the road. They don't really have
Mm,
to go across the country or leave the time zone or, whatever. But this is a scenario where outside of Baker just going back and just digging deep and gutting this out, Carolina, I think, as the more whole team. And so, you get to the end of something like this and you go, one's trending one way and one's trending the other. So, that gives me just a clear look at that.
yep,
What's your
absolutely.
what's your favorite game of the week?
Favorite play is going to be really odd, but I really am kind of thinking that I'm going to lean on Tennessee to cover against Jacksonville. Um, I say that because right now the numbers I'm showing are 12.5 Jacksonville, and my line
Mhm.
says Jacksonville should be 11. But I don't think that I don't think Tennessee is playing as bad as prescribed. I think this is another one of those situations where if we look at how the team the last 4 weeks has been playing, Tennessee's on the uprise. They're doing some things right. They're executing better. Their young quarterback is playing a little bit more within himself and not quite just firing missiles through guys' hands. He's learning how to play quarterback in the NFL. It's an interdivision rival, and I do not see anybody getting blown out by that kind of number in the division. Even though Jacksonville, it's beneficial for them to win, and they're playing for something still technically. Tennessee hasn't given up in any of its games in the last 6 weeks. I like seeing that out of a young team. And so, yeah, Jacksonville's going to win this game. Jacksonville's probably going to win by a touchdown. But are they going to win by almost two? I don't think so. They sure didn't beat Indianapolis by almost two, and Indianapolis didn't have a lot to play for last week.
Yeah, I think
Recency
you're
bias,
right on
maybe.
there. I make it 12.4 right now, which is kind of
Mm-hmm.
right on. And I know that my numbers is they kind of get drug in both directions, um, expand, right? So I think Tennessee's a good play here. Um, because yeah, they need to win. They could get some other help and end up as the 1 seed, but you don't get anything for style
Yeah.
points here. So I think, you know,
Right.
Tennessee is not in a position where they feel like they're just not going to play week 18. There are a lot of people playing
Yeah.
for their jobs. So this does seem like
Yeah.
a very clear play where, yeah, Jacksonville definitely could beat them by 12 and a half. Easy.
Easy. They should.
If everybody played full momentum and they went in there and went like, we have to win this by 2 touchdowns, sure. But this is the kind of one to pick out and go, hey, you have a team that didn't pack it in. This isn't the Jets. They didn't just
No.
go, whatever. These are guys that are still trying to figure out how to get better week to week. And I am 100% with you that like this is a great one. Um, and one that we definitely need to watch for is this kind of an anti-play in some of the pools. Can we
Yeah.
get on something that is a rough looking number on a rough looking team
Yeah.
that can go, hey, how many people are going to go, I want to put one of my top 5 picks on a team that institutionally is a mess. And so
Yeah.
this is a good one to kind of keep in the back of your brain if you're out there and you're trying to close the gap on somebody in one of your pools.
Yeah. No, but that makes a lot of sense because there's probably a pretty good chance that a lot of them are going to be on Tennessee, but maybe at a low number, something like that.
Yeah.
Just I'll take a flyer. I think I'm not going to take the number.
Yeah.
Who is your next favorite that you've got lined up on your books?
My the next one that really here's an odd one. And I think we should talk through this because I don't know exactly why it's working out this way. But I make the Giants 4.5 point favorite. And they're catching somewhere between four and a
Okay.
half and 5.5 points. And that one really jumps off the page because
Wow.
obviously the Giants are still playing. They went out there to Vegas,
Yeah.
put a whipping on Vegas, and gave up the first pick to stomp somebody. And now they're going
Yeah.
home. And Dallas is coming. And Dallas is eliminated. They're not really playing for anything either direction. It's not like they're getting a considerably better draft pick by losing or winning or so I feel like this is a strong play with what these two teams have put on paper recently. Um, where does your number put you at for these guys?
So my number has me at Dallas favored by 6.5. So I'm leaning on the Dallas side of this.
Okay.
I did want to go out and research. So one thing I did before our podcast today was, and I told you this earlier, but I don't think I told the group. I went out and looked at every single team to see um, if they were playing their starters or not, or if they were going to rest. and both the Cowboys and the Giants indicated they would be playing their starters. So they're going to kind of play this as a division rival, head-to-head matchup. Dak is trying to have some statistical season goals hit. Um, so there's some guys playing for some things for the Cowboys for some salary contract stuff. There's some potential season passing records that Dak could be after. I kind of don't see Dallas taking their foot off the gas here, and they're just a better team than the Giants. That being said, man, interdivision stuff, right? It's like here we are. Is it? I mean, Dallas and by field goal, and they can still go out and do all those same things. Dallas hasn't shown me. Was it last week that they were? Yeah, last week was very frustrating, right? They beat Washington up and down the field, pretty much, and didn't cover the score.
All the numbers.
Washington, yeah, but Dallas. I mean, Dallas whooped them all game, and then
Yeah,
won by 6. Well, this is another one of those instances where I can see Dallas going out and just browbeating them and winning by a field goal. And that is where it makes me a little hesitant to just be all over Dallas. Um, so seeing you with your number where it is for the Giants, I mean, there's no reason not to think the Giants could do it. Personally, I'll be on Dallas because I'm not rooting against them. I'm not going to put a lot of points on it. But I'm not going to go against them in the last week of the season because then I don't get to root for them again for 8 months, 9 months.
fair enough. Okay.
Isn't that
All
sad
right.
when you think that way?
Oh, believe me. Look, I don't exactly have a football, but like I have the same thing when we get to the end of baseball season and we're just packing it in from the Cardinals. So yeah, I agree with you there. I just that was one that jumped off the page because I wouldn't have thought that I would have the Giants as a considerably better team than Dallas. But and I think that, in my numbers, a reasonable percentage of that is driven by, the recency that's built into my mechanism where, hey, they go out and they beat the line by 21 points last week,
Yep.
and just give it to Vegas. But when you're getting more than that 3 interdivision, that kind of jumps off the page to me to go, hey, you're at home. If the first quarter goes weird and they score once or twice and that, both teams maybe go, oh, okay, we're just going to kind of run this out and maybe Dallas comes back and wins, but they only win by a field goal or something like that. So that's
Yep.
one that I'm going to kind of watch as we get farther into the
Yeah.
week and see kind of what both teams are talking about as far as their motivation. What's your next favorite one?
Yeah. So I think our schedule has. I think we got time for 2 more.
Yeah.
So let's if you want to, let's talk about the 2 ones that still matter the
Okay.
most that's left on the schedule. We'll
Yeah.
talk about Seattle, San Francisco, and Baltimore, Pittsburgh. One
Yeah.
thing to call out though, if you want to, is that, you know, make sure you're paying attention to who's playing and who's not. Check at the end of the week because there was a few, like Ben said that the Bears would all be playing. Well, in Buffalo, they may or may not be playing the starters. In Philly, they traditionally don't play Week 18. They give them a break, but this week Sirianni says they're gonna. So, I think it's just safe to check before you put your final plays in if starters are playing, if quarterbacks are resting, what the overall scoop is. Just general advice in Week 18. Uh,
That's a great way to point
I'd
out.
love to hear your opinion on San Francisco and Seattle. Right now, San Francisco is catching a half point. I make Seattle 1.5 point favorites in this particular game. I don't love that line, them going into San Francisco. Brain says to override what my number says and to roll with San Francisco after watching the slugfest between San Francisco and Chicago. That being said, Seattle's defense is significantly better than Chicago's, but I think, you know, Seattle's offense is not as good as Chicago's. So I think that we've got a tale of 2 teams here that San Francisco's having to face. Where are you at?
So I am trying to separate where I started the season with wanting it to end the way that I said it was going to start. So I was on San
Yep.
Francisco. If we go all the way back, probably the first episode of this season that we talked about, I went, San Francisco has one of the easiest schedules. They should be being picked that way. And then we had this entire cluster mess of injuries throughout the season, and they kind of fell down to the middle. And now they have a shot at winning the 1 seed. So my brain says, hey, San Francisco could be the winner here. My numbers make Seattle the favorite by zero point 0.8 points before home field advantage. So we're basically looking at, you know, San Fran is a small favorite. They're catching half a point or 1.5 points. So I think that Shanahan figures out how to win this game when it comes down to it. You got Shanahan and Brock Purdy versus McDonald and Darnold. And when you distill it down to that in my brain, I go, is Seattle's sixth best defense going to be able to figure out what to do with what Shanahan can throw at them to the extent that San Francisco's 22nd best defense can't figure out how to slow down Seattle a little bit? My opinion would be no. I'm going to be on San Francisco. If Seattle goes out there and figures out a way to do it, good luck. God bless. You just keep having the numbers come up your role. But I think this is where the party ends. I don't think Charbonnet picks up a 2-point conversion that's sitting by his feet this week. I think that we find out that Seattle ends up just being the 5 seed. They basically lock into the 5 seed if they lose this game. So I think that's where we end up. Or Shanahan turns into a pumpkin. I don't know. I think after they figured out how to deal with Chicago, it puts them in a position where he's really on a heater right now. How's it feel in your head?
Yeah, I mean, they're healthier. I think that's where it boils down to, right? The shit show in the middle of the season was tied to Mac Jones. I mean, while Mac did admirable to kind of hold the ship together, I think at the end of the day, this is a game of having your star players in place and ready to go. I think that Saleh has done a masterful job with that defense. Even
Oh
though
yeah.
they're 22nd ranked, they've lost some stars, man. Losing Bosa and Warner by themselves. I mean,
Uh-huh.
those guys probably salary wise account for 80% of the defense, and talent wise, maybe 75% of the defense. So those are those are some big shoes to fill, and he's been able to keep this thing afloat with Mac Jones as a quarterback going 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out a lot of times. Purdy now has his full display of weapons available to him again. We see Jennings is back. We see Kittle's going to come back this week, I believe. McCaffrey's on a heater. Purdy's actually, you seen. I mean, he was scrambling pretty good against
Uh-huh.
the Bears. He made that one play where he kind of did the little jiggity jew. He's playing pretty well. I hate to say it, but San Francisco's kind of, as we were talking earlier, right? We're talking about teams that are trending up and trending down. Seattle's not trending down, but San Francisco's definitely trending up.
Yeah. That's what it looks like to me. I think, you gotta win the games that are in front of you. And Seattle has done
Yeah,
that to the most part.
yeah.
Like when it gets put in front of them, they've only tripped up 3 times. One, I'm so glad they put the Saturday night game. This is going to be so much fun. And two, um I think this is just one of those clear games that if you don't go, hey, here's what Sam Darnold could be. You just go, what is Sam Darnold? Like, how has he done so far? And what if he just is himself? What if he just plays the
Yeah.
way that he plays? He doesn't. have a horseshoe shoved up his ass before the game kicks off, and he just goes out there and he just plays like regular. What happens here? It's probably that San Fran wins this game. And my favorite thing
Yeah.
is to get a couple of points and believe that that team's probably going to win. It's one of my
Yeah.
favorite things, as is
Yeah.
the game that we're about to jump to, because that's another one where I go, why are they getting points?
Yeah.
And you just go,
Pittsburgh.
okay, yeah, against Baltimore,
Well, who you got there?
who is playing one of two seemingly even quarterbacks at this point. Whether it's Snoop or it's Lamar, they're fine. They should be riding the greatness of Derrick Henry. Some games they do it
Yeah.
and they win. Some games they don't do it and they lose. Now, you would go,
Right.
Harbaugh, why doesn't he know that? I don't know. But he doesn't. Or he can't use him, or there's something, or I don't know.
It's
Maybe there's a ticking clock on how many steps Derrick Henry has left in his career. I don't know what we're doing, but sometimes Derrick Henry just leaves the game for an extended period of time. And to me, this is again one of those things where I just go, what if both teams just play the way they've been playing? What happens?
yeah.
And to me,
Yeah.
that is, we have a game where we get to the third quarter and we don't understand why Derrick Henry isn't carrying the ball 70% of the plays. And we also don't
Mhm.
understand how to pronounce most of the players that Aaron Rodgers is successfully throwing the ball to. And you just go, I don't understand what's happening here. But Pittsburgh's up by 4, and Rodgers doesn't have any dirt on his jersey, and he's just stepping between people like a deer that just learned how to walk, and he's just hitting guys in the hands. And you go, huh, that's odd. We just watched him get beat by Cleveland a couple of days ago. And Pittsburgh has done this all year. If everybody wants to think back to when Indianapolis basically had their season ended by going to Pittsburgh and getting their ass trounced, and then basically just
Yeah.
never got to the same heights again. That's what I'm picturing in my head.
Yeah.
Now, hey, maybe the offense really is broken when DK isn't out there. But for me, I go, especially at 3.5, give me the 3.5. What are you thinking?
Always in division, take the 3.5, especially in the North. Always take the 3.5 in the North. It's just how it lays. I was really enjoying at the beginning of your speech about Derrick Henry is how Jim Harbaugh goes, huh?
Oh,
You were you when you go back and watch this, the hard hitting commentary of Brandon goes, Harbaugh, why is he not playing? Oh, that was fantastic.
that's
I'm
awesome.
with you, Brandon. I think that there's no way that you pick against Pittsburgh in this case with catching the hook. I think it's gonna be a great game. I think it's kind of as you state, right? Who do you trust? Is it Derrick Henry or is it Aaron Rodgers? Derrick Henry, Aaron Rodgers. This potentially is Aaron Rodgers' last game until he comes back in 4.5 years, like Rivers did, just to prove that he could. Um, and there's a chance he would do that. He's that guy. And then, at the end of this, I don't know if it's quite ready for his swan song to end without being in the playoffs. And I don't feel like Baltimore has played well enough this season to win the division and to get into the playoffs. I don't feel like they deserve it. At the beginning of the season, I was convinced they were going to be a powerhouse. I was convinced that it was going to be, once again, Baltimore and Buffalo and Kansas City, and everybody else, was still a year away because of these young quarterbacks like Bo Nix, like Drake May. Maybe T Law had a little help with Travis Hunter coming in. And ultimately, none of that is true. Buffalo's a shell of themselves. Mahomes is on crutches, and Baltimore didn't live up to expectations. So as much as I hate the idea of the Steelers doing this again and doing the whole Tomlin thing, and he's one game over 500 and he makes it in, he makes playoffs and gets beat in round one, which is what happens every year anymore.
Uh-huh.
Pittsburgh is probably more deserving in the sense, and I kind of feel like that's how it's going to play out with the NFL. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah. No, it just it
And
sometimes as a closed ecosystem, things just happen a certain way because it's the same
mhm,
thousand guys playing the same game
yep,
over and over again
yep,
every year. And this just seems like one of those ones where you go, we're going to have an AFC North banger for the last game of the season. You go, probably the underdog.
yeah,
And then when it's
yeah,
these two teams that have played the way that they've played this year, and, look, with home field advantage, I make Pittsburgh a slight favorite. And if you're going to let me get
yeah,
to the 3.5, I have nothing else to do but give it a ride. And it's still one of the, you know, I don't know, three greatest throwers of a football ever against a backup quarterback.
yeah.
Regardless of what you think of him,
No, I mean
and him being
he,
older than me, the guy, there's only a couple of people that have ever thrown a football like he does. And you want to distill it down into just one
yeah,
game to get to play another one? I'm going to ride with that guy.
yeah. This is probably going to be Pittsburgh and the over, and that's probably the play. The number sitting at
That's fun.
40.5. Um, I have to think that this is going to be a game where, you know, both teams are going to score more than 21. I don't know that for a fact, but even if they don't and one of them scores 17, the other's probably going to score 24. So I think that it's going to be, 42 points, 43 scored, which means 23-20, which means Pittsburgh wins 23-20. They cover. Even if they don't, and Baltimore wins 23-20, Pittsburgh covers. And the over hits. That's my astute handicapping.
Yeah, I like that. I think I think I'm with you there. I don't know that the defenses stand this up. I think obviously
Mm-mm.
you're gonna have some plays, but I think that both of the teams probably get their team total, and it just comes down to whether Pittsburgh gets that last score that they need to get up and over.
Yeah, yeah, it'll be fun to watch. I think it's gonna be a great game. I will
Pumped.
be absolutely shocked. I'll be absolutely shocked if on Sunday night we're texting and going, "Wow, I didn't see Baltimore winning this 34-0 with Henry having 4 touchdowns." And
Yeah.
but that could be a game plan. But I mean, I don't see it happening. So we'll see. It could be fun to watch. It's going to be a great week. This is a great week 18 and a great week of college football, and it's New Year's. So happy New Year's, everybody,
Happy New
from the St.
Year's.
Louis Syndicate. Brandon, any parting shots for the group?
No, no. Believe in your handicap. Take your shot. Finish strong.
See ya.
Cheers.